Greetings Space Cadets, it's JPG today with a 25 tips you need to know for starting out in Outworlds 2. Call it what you want, wish I knew earlier, things you need to know. These are some better explanations I think than the game maybe gives a little bit, and giving you lots of info for the first 12 to 15 hours. Let's go. So kicking off with traits and perks. Now obviously your playstyle is going to be different from mine, so I'm not going to go too deep on which ones are best. What I will say is a lot of the traits and a lot of the skills often will have hidden benefits. And some of the benefits of these traits can be bypassed by other pieces of gear. So resilient will effectively give you 3 seconds where you should have died, but you get extra to get yourself out of combat and hopefully heal. Well, you can still use the trauma kits to replace that. Brawny's description only pretty much says you can knock down enemies by sliding or running into them. What it doesn't say, of course, is you can use it to open up certain half malfunctioning doors to gain access to different areas. For sure though, the one that you'll use the most is speech skill, and the more that you raise that speech skill, the way you'll be able to get out of trouble or talk your way into places. And although I said I'm not going to show which one I think is the best because there's so many different playstyles, I think Brilliant is one that you should all try and get, as it will give you an extra bonus skill level that will be leveled up already, meaning you can level up 3 skills much quicker. You will be frustrated by a whole plethora of doors and computer terminals that you won't be able to do much with because you haven't got enough hacking skill or lockpicking skill. So for me, I do kind of recommend choosing maybe them two as something worth using. But if you're watching this video, chances are you already started playing and you've gone past this point already. Last thing I will say about skills, observation is definitely something you might want to get, as not only does it go ahead and show hidden areas or items in certain locations, although you won't use it as much as you think in the early stages, it does also give you 15% extra damage against enemies' weak spots. But the other thing it does, it helps you search out traps. Like this landmine, which you can see the landmines if you really are eagle-eyed, but otherwise with the observation skill it will highlight them a little bit easier and a little bit better. Now back to them floors, and yeah, really be careful in choosing some of these as they can ruin the game. I was pretty much accepting most of these traits as they gave me some negatives for sure, and that's their main point, but they do give you some bonuses. Kleptomania will give you 100% bonus credits when you go ahead and sell any stolen gear, but the flip side is that you'll go around just absolutely stealing anything and anything whenever you're in a settlement, and that can trigger a whole bunch of issues, namely you're going to be spending a lot of money on your bounty. It can even stop you talking to certain NPCs if you've stolen something directly from them in front of them. So is it really worth having all that trouble just to get some extra credits via selling stolen gear? But the big one I've got to warn about, and the game tells you this as well, is that after accepting quite a few of the floors, it will pop up and say, hey, do you want to accept every floor automatically now? But you'll gain an extra perk point every 5 levels. Even though this was my first run, I thought, yeah, this might be fun. And it hopefully means I can look at more of the perks to do better guides with. But honestly, I wish I hadn't, because it just gets more difficult and harder. Definitely something you don't want to do your first run. I've had everything happen to me now where I do reduced damage if I let my guns run out of ammo before reloading, to having less toxicity reduction in my medicines that I'm using, and a lot more. I'm halfway through the game at this point and I'm kind of scared about what the future's going to hold if I now have to keep just accepting these floors automatically. So yeah, please don't accept that one on your first run. So when it comes to exploration, then of course you do want to go into the major hubs and try and talk to as many people as possible so that you can gain quests that will make sense. Although this can overwhelm you somewhat and you'll end up playing it just like a whole list of tasks to do rather than experiencing the world. I did kind of purposely avoid talking to a lot of NPCs in the town when I first got there in Paradise Island, because I really wanted to see what would happen if I just came across different places and explored on my own. I'm pleased to say, yes, you can get lots of rewards and you'll still be able to tie up quest lines by going to some of these locations early, finding certain items that people may want, but you are going to have much harder time working out who you're meant to go and see about whatever it is you find, as the game doesn't always explicitly tell you who is actually looking for this item or who wanted something cleared out. These are mostly tiny little side quests this happens with, and there are some directions for some of them, but even though it's a really obvious thing to suggest, I still think it's worth pointing out. For sure, stock up on your mag locks as well as your shunts. These are both crucial for hacking into devices or breaking into places. And if you've done what I suggested and paid more attention to both of them skills, hopefully it'll make life a bit easier getting into and getting more loot. So take some extra time to loot around and steal these kinds of items, or go ahead and stock up when you can. Whenever you meet an NPC, you really will go through quite a lot. Another reason hacking's so good is you can often use it to your advantage, taking on enemies with the right level, either turning some mechs friendly or some of the WAS drones to go and hunt down your enemies. Even turn certain turrets against some of your foes with the right hacking level. And again, especially for the hard difficulties, will help out a little bit more. Don't bother going through these rifts, or if you're wondering how you can actually go through and what they do, you'll eventually get a device that allows you to travel through them much later in the game. I think sometimes you're going to need credits, sometimes you're going to need resources, so alternate between actually what you do with your junk. For me, I generally keep to a 3:1 ratio, so when I've built up enough resources for junk, I'll go ahead and dismantle them 3 times, and then the 4th time I'll try and sell them. So far this has given me a good selection of parts needed to craft stuff, as well as enough credits rolling in, but I have a bit of a loot obsession, running around going through every box and searching every corner. There are lots of unique armours and weapons, but not as crazy as you would think until maybe the later stages of the game, where you can get shrink ray guns and everything. Uniques often come with more slots, although one of them be filled with a perk already. So for sure, it can be worth hunting high and low for some of these uniques, especially if you think it's going to fit your playstyle. But with the armours, I do find so many of them are just not that worth it. Things matter to me are things like having lots of defence, and you'll pick up lots of them types of armour sets. So I'm not saying skip any opportunity to get some unique armour, but unless it really fits your playstyle, you still may be better off using some of the regular stuff that you come across until you find something really good. There are 6 different types of damage or elemental status effects in Outworlds 2. So if you find a gun that has physical, well, that's going to be good for pretty much any kind of situation against all sorts of enemies. Albeit enemies with high armour will still take a bit more of a pounding. Plasma, aka fire, is good also for most situations other than versus mechs. But for sure, using it against most creatures and humans will do a good job. If you keep hitting an enemy enough with certain effects, they can actually stack and cause another effect to happen. So over time, shooting an enemy will apply that effect, and you'll notice it on the actual enemy itself in a little icon. But if it hits the top of that icon, basically filling it up, it can achieve another status. So an example of plasma, it eventually makes things blow up, if they've not already died from continuous hits. Corrosion's great in terms of dissolving armour on automechs and of course more humans, but not so good for any of the primal creatures you come across, especially the rapidons, which obviously some of them fire acid, and lots of the crabbies too. Build up enough of the corrosion on an enemy and it will take away all of their armour, making it much easier to kill high powered enemies. Shock is great for mechs, does tons of extra damage to them, and you can achieve chain lightning effects if you build up enough of it, which will bounce from one enemy to another. But be careful when you get electrified, as it reduces your energy meter. But yeah, if you apply enough shock damage, you can paralyse enemies. And as you might expect, frost is going to slow down an enemy. Once you've applied enough chilled effect, it becomes frozen, and then frozen enemies will take twice as much damage. Also worth pointing out that critical hits do twice as much damage, even without lots of the multipliers already applied for various armours and whatever weapon you're using. And the last one out of the major kind of damage dealing effects is N-rays. This causes radiation and it will kill anyone that gets hit by it. You likely won't find any kind of guns or items that use that until much later. Beyond that, there are lots more status effects that can be applied depending on what perks you've unlocked, what abilities your companions have got, and certain enemies react differently. So for mechs, if you hit them enough with electrical charge, instead of making them paralysed, it actually turns and converts them into an ally. So good advice is to indeed keep hold of a second gun if you really like it, even though you've got one that's already modded and better, because you may be able to equip it with different mods that turn the bullets into a different type of element. You do lose a certain amount of damage with this, but you'll make up for it with the new effect, and it can be applied to almost anything. So you can make exploding shotgun shells if you want. Shock machine guns, which generally you'll find in the early stages a bit more rare, only fire actual shock, or you can convert that into corrosion, making it even better for taking on mechs. And you guessed it, yeah, it's pretty obvious, but try and keep hold of at least one damage type weapon of each one of the statuses, just in case you really need to lay on a bit more damage against a particular enemy. Or have, like I said, more choice in the same sort of gun, but with different types of mods on it. Double check bodies. There's quite a few bodies that actually have more resources to be gained. You see me taking 2 from the main body, but then you'll find venom sacs, sometimes claws and more from some of the creatures. That kind of applies to certain human enemies as well, as very occasionally you'll find their actual weapon not on their body, but somewhere else. If you see something sparkle, it's worth picking it up. It might not be apparent now, but on Paradise Islands you can find a botanist that wants you to grab a bunch of resources all around the island. You can actually do this before you even meet her, knowing and then saying that you found loads of these resources in that location. Seems pretty obvious, right? But you will come across some of these resources in some of the toxic gas, which makes things a bit more difficult until you can get a special shield that helps you take less damage from it. I've done some mini guides on this and I will point to it a bit later in this video, but yeah, do try and get some of them resources even if they are a bit hard to get. Poop is your friend, well explicitly dung. They're quite easy to miss because they kind of look like rocks, but you'll be surprised how much decent stuff you can get. A mixture between animal parts and tech gear, so it's definitely worth picking up to help you get more crafting done. Pickpocket everyone, but don't buy any of the perks or skills that will give you extra pickpocketing abilities, like being able to see what someone might have. There's only rare occasions that someone will be maybe not being able to pickpocket because there's too many others around. And honestly, it's so easy. I swear the people of Outworlds are just begging for you to take their wallets. And slightly relate to that, and it might seem a bit obvious, but I've seen a few pop up questions, that is, talking about whether or not you can get every piece of loot from different faction leaders. Generally, if you're doing something for one faction, you'll get the reward, but it might mean that some of the gear won't actually be in the other faction's lockbox, even if you've killed them or taken their key. So you've been looking up guides or wikis and they're saying you can get this weapon or that. It might have something to do with whatever faction you sided with if it's not actually there. If you do fall foul of the law, don't panic too much. Yes, you'll lose some credits, but you can gain them back pretty quickly. Otherwise, often you can talk yourself out of trouble, and with the right companions, they'll also help you sometimes. There should be a bounty terminal in every settlement as well, or the major ones at least, on each planet or area, so that's the way that you can clear your bounties too. It's also worth checking these out to pick up your own bounties to go and hunt. The rewards aren't massive in terms of delivering them back, but you often find plenty of loot and resources and maybe some hidden rarer items when you go and take care of the bounties available. It's usually cheaper as well to clear your bounty at one of these rather than through a guard. If you have become an outlaw via maybe more nefarious means like killing some of the NPCs, well, you can actually revert it as long as no other witnesses see you getting up to mischief. And of course, making sure there are indeed no witnesses. I was trying to see if this was a perk that I'd maybe accrued by accident somehow, or maybe a trait. While the suave trait you can choose at the start of the game does make it harder to become an outlaw, as you need an extra 2 levels effectively. Don't think it had much impact on this happening to me when my bounty was cleared by killing the witnesses. So pick and choose your moments to turn renegade or mass murderer. And likewise, be careful what companions you've got with you when you are going on a killing spree. It's very possible to lose a lot of your companions depending on your actions, or having to downright kill them or take them on. Just send them back to the ship if you know they're aligned with a certain faction that you may be going up against. Obviously, it's not such a big deal in big story moments and she'll kind of forgive you, but there are definitely ways that you can upset your companions enough that they will leave or attack you. And make sure you try out all the different companions and see which one is suiting your playstyle. As you level up, they will gain perk points as well at level 5, level 10, and so on. Then you just got a choice about which one of the perks that you're going to choose from. And again, fairly obvious, but there are other ways that you can give them some bonuses by getting upgrades from. Each NPC companion you meet will have 2 quests eventually. The first one will be generally in the area that you find them. Complete the quest and you'll get an upgrade kit that will essentially give you a choice between certain new abilities. And then later on in the game you should find advanced quests that will do the same thing give you even more abilities to choose from. While the companion's skills and perks often give you more benefits as well as them, these party upgrades are more specifically designed around what they can do, turning maybe some of their ammo into certain different shots, or giving them more higher percentage, or giving them even more health. They'll also get a snazzy new look or piece of armour too. And I highly recommend always having Niles in your party, or at least for a while, because you can always craft stuff. He's pretty much a walking crafting bench, giving you access to your party upgrades and obviously being able to mod your guns, craft or break down anything. This one might blow your minds because I didn't realise for hours, but the lockboxes that you can find while you're exploring obviously go back to your ship. If you found more than one lockbox, you can actually cycle through them, so you don't need to waste all of your restricted cards on one item that you're not really going to use. Instead, just flick through them and choose the item that you really want. It seems so obvious, but there's plenty of glowing lights all around the world, so I didn't really think to actually touch the arrows for a while. So I found around 4 or 5 of these lockboxes all around Paradise Island, so there's definitely a few bits of gear you may want to hunt down, and they're always unique. Just be aware you may need to upgrade your robot mech companion first before you get the choice of seeing what else there is. The encryption keys you can buy from traders, you often get them as rewards for a lot of the side quests, and of course you can just find them out in the world too. Make sure you go ahead and mod all of your gear. You may be thinking, I'm going to save this particular mod or maybe this item and I'm worried about changing it over to something else. There will be plenty of ways that you can find the recipes for mods, whether it's giving you extra shielding, having more weapon slots, or adding sights to your guns. I've always had a tendency to save stuff thinking I want to use it for a really unique or special gun that I'll find later. But there aren't that many mods that you'll come across that are really uber special in the early hours. So my advice is to break down any of your junk rather than sell it, so that you hopefully be able to craft a lot more mods and give you the upper hand with your armor and your weapons improved. You will lose the mod if you do decide to swap it out for another one, but generally as long as you've picked up a mod you get the recipe for it as well. So you can always go ahead and craft new ones. Aim high when jumping. You will be able to get a double jump ability, even a triple jump later on in the game, but it's surprising how much you can actually climb if you're aiming in the right way. If you're simply just going up against the wall or a kind of box and then just jumping, you won't necessarily clamber. I think it's to do with the mantle mechanics maybe not just being that great, so always aim higher and above whatever rock you're trying to climb and you'll find less maybe frustration. Quite a few perks have hidden little bonuses and buffs. You can often make things like explosives using certain gas if you've got your explosives skill up, or being able to craft certain medicines if you've got your medical or science up. So you will think some of these might not fit your playstyle. If you've got any spare points going, it might be worth investing in a few. By the time you get to mid game, just take advantage of some of the free resources that you can then utilise into gear or items you need. At worst, anything you do make, you can always then go ahead and sell. It can be difficult trying to remember locations of every box or maybe door that had a certain skill requirement before you could unlock it. Make sure you use the waypoint marker. You can have quite a few of these and they won't interfere with your map too much, they only show up on your minimap. You can put a bunch of them down as well so you don't have to worry about losing one, and hopefully keep you on track with stuff that you might want to investigate once you've got some more skills. I shouldn't really have to say this, it is an RPG after all, but there are many ways to get through certain objectives or access certain areas. The best example is the very early stages trying to get into the Vox relay. Talk to the guard at the front with the right kind of skill levels and also giving him 2 people that he basically wants to murder, and you'll be able to walk freely through all the restricted zones. Go in guns blazing and you'll be able to pick up more crafting resources, items, gear and ammo. And of course the stealthy approach means you'll have less trouble, but you will be able to sneak by maybe a bit quicker. You get XP no matter what route you take, but it's probably true you do gain a bit more by taking the guns out approach. But yeah, I guess echoing what an RPG really is, take a good look at the different options, scour around certain areas if there's a bottleneck and see if there's other ways to go. Main point of the Vox relay to get access is lowering the bridge, but there are 2 other super sneaky routes that you can find if you've got the right upgrades like double jump or being able to go and climb some caves. But there's always pros and cons. Being super sneaky means you might actually miss out on getting access to the armory that's on the bridge station, which can give you some pretty good gear. So I do think it's worth backtracking sometimes. Of course, you may just want to blitz through it in one particular way and style and then get the replayability of going through it again with a new character, which this game does do really well with the floor system especially. There's a good amount of traps and hazards that can stop you getting loot unless you've got the right equipment. If you still want to risk it for the biscuit, make sure you've got plenty of trauma kits. They can be expensive to buy and maybe rare to find, but they will help you out in a bind, especially on them harder difficulties. As I mentioned earlier, I have done some quick guides on showing you how to get hold of the thruster boots, and there is also a shield that helps with the gas and more just protection against certain damage. So a very brief description of where and how to access this stuff, because it is easily missable. If you head to the Sweet Spire Grove, which you'll be directed to by missions by talking to the guards at the front of the bridge to the Vox Relay, you can help out these NPCs and ultimately get access to the double jump. Here it is on the map, and if you want more details than that, then do go and check out the slightly longer guide I did on it. Likewise with the shield against gas and certain traps, you can pick that up by completing quests for the Mech Repair Center. If you want the missions or quests to start off, you need to go and talk to Hogarth in West Point, and you will need to pick up a special access card over to the east side of the map of east of Fairfields. It's a pretty big facility overrun by lots of gnashing teeth creatures, but inside you will find Inez, one of the companions, and a special terminal that will give you a chance to print out the access path that you need to head to the southeast of the map to the Mech Repair Center. Make sure you talk to all the NPCs, especially Marshall, the commander of this facility, Delphine, and this guy here, Woodrow, and between conversing and snooping in Marshall's terminal, you'll get a quest to go ahead and help them turn off a gas leak in the facility. There's a few little steps with it, so again, if you want more details, check out the longer guide, which I'll leave a link to in the comment section for this and the double jump boots. So that's pretty much it for a starter guide with 25 tips I think you guys should know. Got any tips that I think are good for beginners, then absolutely pop them in the comment section down below. Check out the other guides that I mentioned, like I said, if you're still looking for additional help, and hopefully I'll be making more Outworlds 2 stuff in the future. Until next time, thanks a lot for watching, bye bye.